The ad itself was a red flag, but at the same time it was appealing. It said, earn $120 per night as a night guard in the morgue, and to apply now. I had been jobless for a while and had to afford to pay my rent and late bills, and with this kind of pay, I'd be able to live like a king. So I applied, hesitantly, half hoping I wouldn't get a response from the company. But not even 2 hours later, I got an email from the employer. Thank you for applying to our position of night guard and morgue. We are happy to inform you that your skills are suitable for our company and would hereby like to offer you a 1-year contract. If you agree to the terms below, please leave your signature via the online signature website and arrive at the location provided by 10 p.m. tonight. Tonight? I thought it was a little too soon, but I didn't complain. I didn't know what to expect or who I'd meet there, so I put on a shirt and jeans and went to the address a little early. I was there at 9:40 p.m., and a middle-aged man who seemed to be a morgue worker greeted me. He introduced himself as George and explained why I was sent here in such a short notice. I guess the security company I worked for was in desperate need of replacing the guy before me. It wasn't long before George began showing me around the morgue and mentioning how easy the job is. I asked what specific duties I should focus on. He leaned in with a bit of a serious tone and said, "Oh, that? No big deal. Just make sure no one breaks in or out." We stared at each other for a bit of an awkward moment, but then he chuckled and said, "I'm just kidding. Well, listen, my shift is over, so I'll be going now. Just sit tight in the office and relax until 6 a.m. That's when the next guy starts." And just like that, he left. I sat down by the desk in the office. I thought this probably isn't going to be so bad. There was a paper in front of me, and after observing it, I realized it was a list of rules addressed to me. It said, "To the new guard, welcome to the company. Below is a list of rules for your job. Rule 1. The first thing you should do is conduct a full sweep of the area to make sure nothing is out of the ordinary, including the crypt. Important note, if any of the body chambers are pulled out in the crypt, push them back in. They should remain pushed in at all times. Rule 2. After the sweep, you may remain in the office until the end of your shift." There were more rules listed below, but I decided to first check the place out. It was fairly small, with one big room that had medical supplies in it, the crypt, and the bathroom. I first decided to get the worst out of the way, the crypt. I left the office and opened the sturdy crypt door, immediately getting hit by a wave of cold air. Inside were 2 bodies in the carts in the middle of the room, and cold chambers on the walls. All of them were closed, so I hastily left the room. On my way back to the office, I saw a man in a lab coat standing in the medical room. He was fiddling with some of the tools next to a body bag. I yelled for his attention, asking if he works here, but he ignored me and simply continued doing whatever the hell it was that he was doing. George did mention that sometimes the morticians stay late, and seeing as the person was dressed as one, I waved my hand in dismissal and returned to the office. I was about to continue reading the rules when there was a sudden creaking sound reverberating throughout the building. It was faint, but it sounded like the pipes. It intermittently lasted for a few seconds and paused just as long. I ignored it and slacked some more, checking out my phone. But the longer the creaking lasted, the more I got unnerved, because they began to sound a lot less like pipes and more like moans. I got out to ask the man I saw earlier about the sound, but the place was empty. I couldn't tell where exactly the sound was coming from, but it sounded like the crypt, so I went there. As soon as I opened the door, the whole building went silent. I held my breath as I observed the room, and then I realized one of the body drawers was pulled out slightly. I pushed it back in and bolted back to the office. The creaking was completely gone by then. I continued reading. Rule 3. You may sleep in the office, but it is inadvisable. Just then, The loudest sound just about made me jump out of my skin.
Please! Someone! Let me out!
The voice cried from somewhere, and the pipes carried his voice. I stood up, heart racing.
Let me out! I can't breathe!
The voice repeated, now followed with a series of loud bangs. I opened the office door and screams were apparently coming from the crypt. I shuddered, but decided to open the door.
I'm not dead! It's a mistake! This is a mistake, please!
The voice got louder as soon as I opened the sturdy door. I frantically looked around while the man continued screaming bloody murder and banging. I approached the source of the sound and leaned in to listen and make sure that it was the right chamber.
I'm not dead! Let me out, please!
The voice and the banging suddenly stopped. When I abruptly pulled out the drawer, I was met with a cold, dead body of a middle-aged man. I stood there, staring at the corpse, my mind unable to comprehend what had just happened. I heard it very clearly, felt the banging as I held the drawer handle, and then it was as if someone just shut it off abruptly. Was my mind playing tricks on me? I pushed the drawer back in and bolted out of there, shutting the office door and thinking that applying here may have been a bad idea. I felt like I was on needles, but I convinced myself after a while that it was all in my head. I continued reading the rules. Rule number 4. You may play music to kill the silence, so long as it doesn't drown out any outside noises. Rule number 5. If you hear incoherent sounds coming from the crypt, you can ignore them. Rule number 6. If those sounds turn into panicked screams, do the following. 1. If the screams are female, ignore them until they stop. Do not enter the crypt during this time under any circumstances. 2. If the screams are male, locate the source of the screams and pull out the body drawer. This should stop the screaming. The page just ended there. I placed the paper down and leaned back into the chair. It was 1 a.m. I started feeling sleepy, and after a while, my eyes began to shut. Just as I started drifting into a dream, I felt a firm grip from behind my shoulder. I instantly shot up, knocking the chair down in the process, but no one was there. I no longer felt sleepy. Everything was quiet for a while, and I went to the bathroom once more. When I returned, it was 4 a.m., and I was pretty much ready to end the shift here. I started thinking how it wasn't so bad for $120 until I flipped the paper with the rules and realized there was something else written on the back. Rule number 7, all the staff will be out of the building by 10 p.m. So if you see a man in a lab coat during your shift, do not, under any circumstances, try to talk to him. I read the rule 5 times over, but the text remained the same. There was a gentle knock at the office door. I looked up, and through the glass, I saw the man in the lab coat grinning at me. It's 4:30 in the morning now, and he keeps. I'll never forget the night I was assigned to work the late night shift as a security guard at Funtime Freddy's, a seemingly innocent kids restaurant. The place had a peculiar vibe at night, like the animatronics were watching my every move. As I settled into my office, the security monitors displayed the empty dining area. It was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the animatronics machinery. But I couldn't shake the feeling that their lifeless eyes followed me as I watched the screens. Around midnight, a faint, distorted melody filled the air. It was the music box inside Funtime Freddy, an animatronic bear who was known for its quirky behavior. I glanced at the monitor and saw it swaying, its metallic limbs jerking in sync with the tune. I decided to investigate and cautiously stepped into the room. The flickering fluorescent lights created strange shadows, and my heart raced a bit as I reached the stage. The animatronics stood still, their glossy eyes locked onto me. I could have sworn they were just a fraction closer than before. The music box grew louder, its tune more discordant, and Funtime Freddy began to twitch violently. In a fit of panic, I backed away, stumbling over a discarded balloon. That's when I heard a child's laughter echoing through the empty restaurant. I was alone, or so I thought. Dread sank in as I sprinted back to the office, locking the door behind me. The laughter continued, growing increasingly unsettling. On the monitors, the animatronics were now missing from the stage. They were out there, somewhere in the restaurant. I watched as Funtime Freddy's distorted face appeared on one of the monitors just right outside my office. It was as if he knew I was watching. The laughter persisted, becoming more childlike and haunting. I heard whispers and the static of the intercom. Faint, indecipherable voices. Terrified, I called the police, explaining the bizarre situation. As I waited for help to arrive, the laughter and whispers intensified, making it impossible to think. It was as though the restaurant had a life of its own. When the police finally arrived, they searched every inch of the restaurant, but found no one. The animatronics were back on the stage, seemingly innocent. No signs of forced entry or intruders. I couldn't explain the eerie events I'd witnessed, but I knew I couldn't stay at Funtime Freddy's any longer. I resigned from my security job, but I couldn't shake the memory of that night. To this day, I'm haunted by the feeling that there's more to those animatronics and that restaurant than meets the eye. If you find yourself at Funtime Freddy's, pay attention to the animatronics, see if the eyes follow you, and let me know. My name is Felix. I'm 22 years old, who earns a living off of small-time jobs. Made some bad decisions during my teenage years and dropped out of high school at the age of 18. I was young, wild, and reckless. I didn't care about anyone's opinion and was privileged enough to be born in a decent household. My father earned a lot of money, so I never got a job. But I came to my senses after my dad passed away in an accident. I was 18 at the time. The burden to provide for the family now fell on my shoulders. I had to put food on the table for myself, my mother, and my 7-year-old sister from then on. I did a lot of work just to get a sustainable income. I mowed lawns, babysat for my neighbors, walked other people's dogs, all just for a few extra bucks. At 20 years old, I was not only doing the work I did then, when I was 18, but also got a nighttime job as a security guard at a mall. I was working really hard every day just to survive, which led me to become sleep deprived most of the time. And so after working like this for 2 years, I became irritable and short-tempered. I got fired from that job for misbehaving with the owner's son. I didn't know saving a girl from 2 drunk men touching and catcalling her was misbehaving, but okay. That's when I started looking online for a nighttime job, and I came across an ad, and it was a job offer from a cab company. It read, "Positions open as a night shift cab driver at R Cabs. Work 6 hours a day, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 days a week. Earn $150 a day. For further information, call the number below." The offer didn't seem that bad. I calculated the monthly income, which came out to a total of $3,600 a month. With this amount of money, I could stop mowing lawns and taking care of babies, all while providing for my family and even buying them gifts every once in a while. Not to mention the fact that because I would not be working day shifts, if I got this job, I could finally catch up on some sleep. I called the number that was on the ad, and the man by the name of Dave introduced himself. I inquired about the job after a quick interview over the phone and got hired. The only thing that struck me as odd were some of the questions he asked, like, "Are you an imaginative man? Can you follow a strict list of rules to the T if asked to? Can you keep calm under hazardous conditions and drive safe, even when you're speeding?" Questions like that raised some red flags, but I was too blinded by the high amounts of pay they were offering. He told me I could start as soon as today. I looked at the clock hanging from the wall. It was 10:12 p.m. I told him I would be there at 12 a.m. sharp. My mother was ecstatic when I gave her the news. She was more happy with the fact that I would spend more time with her and catch up on some sleep than the amount that I would be making. I told her I would buy her something nice as soon as I collected my first check. When I reached the decided location at 11:58 p.m., it was just a kilometer away from my house, so I didn't bother bringing my car. As Dave said, the company will be providing the cabs. At 12 a.m. sharp, a Prius pulled up and parked right in front of me. A man wearing all black got out of the car and walked over to me. He greeted me with a warm smile and gave me the keys to the car I was supposed to be driving. It was a Prius, as mentioned. He congratulated me on getting the job, and he set up the RCAB app on my phone, and just before leaving, handed me a piece of paper and $150, then said, "Read this paper as soon as you can. It is a list of rules for you to follow." With this, he turned around and started walking into the night. After I saw his turn at the corner, I got into the car, closed the doors, and smoothed out the folded piece of paper and started reading it. It read, "Hey Felix, this is Dave. Now, there's something you should understand. Only you can read this text on this piece of paper, so there's no point in going to the cops or suing us, because frankly, no one would believe you. Keep that in mind. And also, majority of the people you will pick up and drop off will not be human." The note continued. Rule number 1. If you get a pickup request from a number with only 6 digits, call them up and politely decline. Do not go within 100 meters of their location. Always apologize and make up a reason why you cannot come. The creature doesn't take rude remarks well. Rule number 2. Always seat the passengers in the back seat and check their mirror reflection. If they have a reflection, drop them off at their location and do not ask for money. They will pay us as they wish. Rule number 3. Do not eat meat in the cab. The smell of meat might capture some creature's unwanted attention. And believe me when I say, you don't want their attention. Rule number 4. If you get a call from a person you know, do not answer the call. It is not them. If you do respond to them, you'll hear a deafening screech that'll burst your eardrums. Rule number 5. Do not try to abandon the car on the road, or you will die in the most brutal way possible. And yes, they can read minds. Rule number 6. You cannot give this job up without working here for at least 2 weeks, for the reasons I cannot specify because of the company's policy. Rule number 7. If you see dark figures running along the car, speed up and try to ignore them. Do not stop or slow down. If you maintain a speed of 80 miles per hour, they will not be able to catch up. The other option is driving on a busy road. They will perform mock charges and give you illusions that they are gaining on you. Rule number 8. If you smell rotten meat in the back seat, do not look behind you. Instead, take the pistol from the glove compartment, close your eyes, turn around, and shoot. It cannot hurt you if you cannot see it. Rule number 9. If your engine dies down, do not step out of the car. It is bait to get you out. Rule number 10. Do not dial for anyone. They will not pick up. Calling for help also annoys the creature after you. Your most beloved person might just die of natural causes. And finally, rule number 11. At 6 a.m., bring this car to your house, leave the key in, and walk back inside your home. The car will be gone in an hour or so, and will return once your next shift begins at 12 a.m. I chuckled at this stupid list. Scary pranks on the new guy, huh? I whispered under my breath and started driving. After just about 5 to 10 minutes, my mom started calling. Just before I could pick it up, I froze with fear. I could smell the scent of rotting meat, just like one of the rules had stated. Although I did take it as a joke, and I thought of it as one, you can never be too safe. So, I slowly opened the glove compartment, took out the pistol, and closed my eyes. Then I turned around and fired 6 shots, 2 bullets at each seat. I heard a loud shriek, After about 5 seconds, I opened my eyes to see that the seats were empty, but one of the windows was open, and there was some blood on the left seat. I cleaned it up with a towel and kept it in the glove compartment and started driving. It wasn't long before I got a request. It was a regular number. I started driving towards its location. The passenger was a girl. She got in the back seats and I started driving. I slowly tilted the rearview mirror, hoping and praying that she had a reflection. Luckily, she did. We eventually reached her destination, which was on a farm on the outskirts of town. When we arrived, she got out the car and climbed up on one of the farm walls with ease. I thought it was weird because it was a pretty high wall. Eventually, I received another request and I checked its location. My heart dropped. When I saw the passenger's number, it only had 6 digits. The location showed roughly 87 meters away from me. I started my car and began driving. It was gaining on me. I began to panic. It was only 50 meters away from me now. I could feel the ground, shaking footsteps and low-pitched growls. I sped up to nearly 100 miles per hour, and I noticed that I was successfully moving away from it. I was about 92 meters away, and that's when I noticed them, the dark figures. As mentioned in the rules, they were running alongside my car. I almost swerved off the road, but I kept my cool and tried my best to ignore them. The figures, which looked like shadows of a human just a minute ago, distorted into demonic shadows within seconds. Walls around me started to bleed, and I somehow maintained a constant speed of nearly 100 miles per hour without crashing. And after a short and intense chase, everything was suddenly back to normal. I was beginning to think I had lost my mind. Before I knew it, it was 4 a.m. I ended up picking up 3 normal passengers, and the rest of my shift flew by with ease. I did everything that Dave, the man on the phone, told me to do, with the last rules stating to park the car outside my house, and with that, I sighed of relief, feeling more exhausted than ever before. I woke up around the late afternoon and handed my mom the cash that was given to me earlier by the man in the black suit. She was more than happy. I knew if I told her what I'd actually been through, she wouldn't believe me. So here I am, just sitting here, typing this at 10 p.m. I don't want to go back to that car again, but I have no option. No one will believe me. But before I go, I just want to know, has anyone else got this job offer from our cab services?